we are gonna 100% Star Trek.
So much Star Trek.
That's the yeah. So how are you doing, Chris? Let's start a podcast together.
This is a thing. It's gonna be great. I'm super excited. Like so stupidly excited for this. I don't know why I'm this excited, but I'm raring to go. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, so even when you a couple weeks ago you mentioned to me that you wanted to watch all of Star
All of the
Trek,
Star Trek.
including and starting with the original series, which I kind of at first was like, wow, that'll take the rest of everyone's life.
Yep.
But then as I thought about it over the past couple of weeks, and we've been watching a little bit of Star Trek and stuff, I was like, well, we could take a real hard look at every episode and make a podcast about it and do that for the rest of everyone's life.
And I'm like I said, super excited. There's about 925 items out right now at this time that I've been able to find and collate the information on so far. So like we've got movies, TV shows, shorts. I think the only thing we're not really covering is books and video games, honestly.
We might though.
But
let's not
so I don't know.
I mean, yeah, I mean we might. I mean, like we right before I started recording, we were talking about potential bonus episodes and stuff, so we'll see about that. But really, the goal, the project is every episode, and then we'll start looking at shorts and animated series.
Oh, I was playing an animated series right after the original series, so that's getting pushed back.
Yeah,
that's pushed back. That's cool too.
Well, the question that we had discussed was Star Trek Prodigy.
Yeah, fair enough. And
but now we know
that one is at the time of recording. That's not currently available in a non-pirated way, and I don't really feel like stealing.
Yeah, but we did just learn that it supposedly is going to have a second season on Netflix.
Yeah, they're expecting it sometime in 2024. I don't have specifics yet, so we'll keep an eye on it and make those decisions when we get the access to it, if we do.
Exactly. So 925 pieces of media. That doesn't sound like that much. I've surely watched 925 pieces of media already.
All you and I were talking about it too, where we agree we've basically, if not seen everything, seen the majority of Star Trek. So it's really rewatching a lot of it, especially the older stuff.
One potential title for this podcast is Our Star Trek Rewatch. What I have seen the least of is the original series.
Oh, really?
I've probably seen more of the animated series than the original series.
Wow. No, well, that's definitely, I'm the other way around. The newer stuff is really where I start to miss stuff. My partner and I don't have cable, and we haven't for a while now. So catching the newer stuff, I had to have it on a service that, showed it if I was going to watch it, right? So we didn't have that all the time. So yeah, Discovery, Strange New World, and Picard. I have never seen an episode of Picard.
I love Picard.
I'm really excited when we get to it. I love Sir Patrick Stewart, and I cannot wait to see what he does with the character, Again, well, like the reprisal.
Yeah, it's great. So what information do you have about episode 0?
So tonight we're watching The Cage. It's directed by Robert Butler and was written by Gene Roddenberry. This was never actually officially released as like an actual air date thing, but it is the original pilot, right? So where better to put it but the start of the whole show. I've got the IMDb rating of 7.6 out of 10. So, pretty well rated considering it's from the 60s and, it has its own little campiness to it that the rest of it doesn't,
Yep. Oh, sorry.
No, go on.
I sat down maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I think probably pre-pandemic when Star Trek was on Netflix. I sat down one afternoon with my dad and I watched this episode. And it's about Christopher Pike. I believe he has Una. After this pilot, the show was reworked into a second pilot with William Shatner and Captain Kirk. So this is the Christopher Pike who is now a much more known character, but he was in the original series.
If I remember correctly, too, this is when they had the female first officer instead of
Una. I believe I might be wrong.
I don't remember her name, but yeah, there was a female first officer, and that was actually a big problem for the execs on the show. They didn't want.
They were like, no way.
Well, not both the female first officer and an alien. They were like, pick one. You get either Spock or you get her. So he chose Spock, which is why Spock becomes the first officer in the actual pilot per TV. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that Una is Pike's first officer in Strange New Worlds, and I think that this is that. I could be wrong, but I think it's that character.
Okay, I honestly don't remember, so I'm trusting you on this one. You know?
Yeah, I don't. And again, we're in the things I have asked most part of what I think is going to be in this episode. Yeah. I think that Una might be. I think Una is a Lorian, which I think is the race that Guinan is. But this doesn't have anything to do with this episode. So
yeah, I have no idea about her race at all. To be honest,
I'm not sure if that's correct at all. What do you remember about this episode, and when have you seen it last?
Last time I saw it, we're looking at like probably something in the 7+ years range.
Okay.
To be frank, like it's been a minute. No, I don't remember a lot of it. Like it has been a very long time, but there is that whole cultural zeitgeist of it, right? And I never remember how much of it is cultural references to it and how much of it is the actual episode.
Right.
And if the stuff I'm remembering is from that episode or other shows. So like,
sure.
I very clearly remember Pike in the wheelchair with the beeping, but I never remember where that comes from, kind of thing, you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's not this. This is the beeping is an actual episode in the actual series where Pike returns.
Okay. See, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't remember this episode very well, and I've got bits of other episodes that overlay, because like Pike was not a big character for obvious reasons. So
yeah, not in TOS. He is now.
Yeah, he is now. No, and like he came up in the reboot movies back in like 2009 and stuff.
Sure.
With Chris Pine. Like he totally comes up a few times.
Yep.
Which is part of the issue for me, is where he's not the one and done. It all gets confused.
Yeah, and it's easy to confuse episodes of Star Trek. When I talk about episodes of Star Trek with people, almost every time, like, we end up like thinking that two plot lines from two different episodes are like the same plot line and get very confused.
Yeah, no, it's hard, because especially where, for example, I'm terrible at the episode names. And I'm going through, as I'm building our list, because we're going to keep track of the seasons and our thoughts on stuff to a degree offline as well.
Yep.
So while I'm building this, there's multiple episodes that are almost the exact same name. Or like they have very similar names, but like one word is changed.
Especially between shows.
Yeah, like there's a bunch of them across different like series altogether. Like TNG will have an episode name that's very similar to a Voyager episode. That's very similar to a Prodigy episode. Like it's really not like unique all the time. And when you get this many episodes in a program, it's hard to keep it that unique. So it makes sense, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's easy, and especially with different teams of writers and things being produced over the course of several decades in different time periods, you know. And science fiction, there are certain tropes that just certain story structures are going to repeat. And but yeah, there's certain stories that appear, like the same framework of the same story appears a couple times in like all three of the 90s shows.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, the 90s, with them all running concurrently, there was a lot of crossover. I mean, we've talked about it before with like Ryan being in freaking everything, a Worf, and you know, there's a lot of that crossover because of that, right?
I don't feel like there is any character. There's probably several actors, but I don't think that there is a character that appears on Voyager, DS9, and TNG. But maybe,
I thought Reggie was on all three.
I don't think Reggie is on DS9.
See, I don't know. I don't think I ever saw all of DS9, so I can't really. And it was always Deep Space Nine for me was my guilty pleasure. I'd wake up for school and get ready, and I'd watch half the episodes, then tape the rest of it, and then I'd watch the rest of it when I got home.
Awesome.
And my schedule changed at some point, so I ended up not catching everything because I couldn't watch it anymore. Okay. So, or the TV schedule or whatever, it just didn't align anymore. So,
sure.
I don't actually know everything about DS9. It's not bad, but I know I've missed a bunch.
Well, we're gonna rewatch it.
Yay. No, I'm really, like I said, I'm really excited. This is gonna be a ton of fun. I'm gonna catch up on my Star Trek lore. It's gonna be great.
I'm glad you're excited because this is very good energy. And I really, yeah, I was like, and I told you today, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get anyone to do this with me. So, so
Yeah, no, I've been wanting to rewatch it. Like I went back to school in my late 20s, early 30s, and while I was there, Netflix had the Star
Oh
Treks.
yeah, oh yeah,
So
that was a great time.
well, and at that point they let me do downloads too if I had a tablet. So I used to
Ah,
download the episodes and go by train to school, and I'd watch an episode or two every day, and I watched through all of Voyager that way, and it was fantastic. And I've been wanting to ever since then do the rest of the shows. I just never got around to it because it's a lot of TV, and
oh yeah.
it's a commitment.
All right, well, you're committed now.
I'm excited. Let's do this.
All right, you got anything else to say about the cage before we begin?
No, I really don't. I wish I remembered it better. I'll tell you that much for free, but I don't know. I don't have anything else really with it.
Pike has to fight a bunch of guys. I bet there's going to be an Orion slave girl. I bet we're going to see an Orion slave girl.
I don't know if there's going to be one quite this early, but definitely in the first season. I just don't know if it's the first episode.
All right, we're about to find out. Hello, and welcome to the Least Ready Room, a podcast where your internet friends Dave and Chris are going to watch 925 pieces of Star Trek media and also review them. And by the time we're done doing that, I'm sure there will be 600 more episodes and movies and things. So really, what we're saying and what we're doing here is that we've devoted the rest of our natural lives to watching and talking about Star Trek, and I'm into that. Those are things I like to do. So let's do it. This is episode 1. I believe you have heard the premise and us discussing what we intend to do, and also I just repeated it to you, so let's get to it. First, before we rejoin myself and Chris at the end of Episode 0, The Cage, I have a segment here where I spoke with our other internet friend Midori about Episode 0, The Cage, and I've got these 5 interview questions that I want to kind of try to streamline for a rotating segment. And I don't know if we'll have a guest every week or if sometimes they will watch with us, and sometimes we'll see who ends up being involved and what ends up happening. This in fact is the pilot. This is probably episode 1. I don't know. Can I make it episode 0? We'll find out. I'll find out when I actually go to upload this and start a new podcast and get everything. Obviously, it's not done yet. I'm recording this, and then I have to edit it, and then, so I mean, obviously, what am I saying? Thank you so much for listening to the Least Ready Room, and here is Midori, and then we will talk to myself and Chris again, and and then I will say thank you and goodbye. So, great to be here, great to have you all here. And here we go. This is the first episode of whatever this is going to be. Pretty good. I've got 5 questions concerning the episode that we are going to talk about.
Sounds good.
This is not the first question, but you watched episode 0, The Cage?
I did.
Okay, great. The first question is, how did you like it?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
I don't typically watch older TV shows,
Okay.
and specifically ones that like involve futuristic stuff because it kind of looks a little ridiculous, honestly.
Sure.
So I mean, well, and also this is the unaired pilot,
Yeah.
right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. This was
So,
not even. Yeah. This didn't even make it to TV.
so I'm curious, moving forward, maybe watching the next episode and seeing how similar, how different it is. But watching this, I'm not sure why they didn't air it, but I wonder if it's because some of it was just a little over the top and silly.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, obviously they did rework it after seeing this. And I don't know. Yeah, and I am also not very familiar with TOS. So when I start watching episode 1 and 2 and stuff, I'm not sure. Well, we'll see. We'll see if I notice a change in any of the quality of the sets and stuff. I mean, we did talk about, I feel like it is pretty, relatively inexpensively produced, for the time.
Right. For the time, yeah.
A lot of the sets and costumes, you can just tell. Did you like the Barbarian?
The Barbarian was very silly. No, some of the costumes looked like they were straight out of a Spirit Halloween.
Did you get the idea that perhaps they had just gone into the wardrobe of whatever sets or whatever shows were shooting in that building and just like, yeah, let's take this costume, and they've got this lying around that no one's using, and
yeah, it felt a little random.
Grab all these spears, get these spears and axes onto our set.
And just kind of throw them on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
We're just going to throw them all on the ground.
You like Christopher Pike as a character?
I do. I actually kind of did start to like him. So I'm a little disappointed, not knowing much about TOS, but knowing that he's not really the main. Like the fact that it's, what is it? Discovery, I think he's in. And then some of the newer ones.
Yes. He does show up again in the original series after this.
Yeah. And I've seen the movies a long time ago well,
I guess it depends which ones. Please go ahead.
The newer ones with Zachary Quinto.
Yep, there's a Christopher Pike in those.
So yeah, but I kind of started liking him as a captain, and then I was like, wait a minute. He's not the captain of this. And then I went and I was like, why don't I know anything about this episode? And then that's where I saw it was the unaired pilot. And then once they said they weren't going to air it, that the guy that was playing Christopher Pike backed out. And so, everything got changed.
Yeah, I suppose I could have been clearer when I was telling you which episode to watch. Because, it is, it is episode 0 for a reason.
Well, next time I will make sure that if I'm watching an unaired pilot, I'll also watch the next one to compare and contrast. Although I think I will still watch the next episode of this, see how it's like. I think based on this episode, I probably wouldn't have continued watching, but we'll see what changes they've made,
Yeah, great. I will be watching it sometime this week, and I'll catch up with you again about it. So that was the first question of the 5.
Okay.
Question number 2 is there are there any tidbits, and I'll give you an example. I'll give you a bad example, actually. But are there any legacy aspects that you noticed in that episode that you're like, oh wow, that's cool. They were doing, the transporter or stuff that has become a mainstay of the series. That's kind of interesting to see in the very first episode. And the thing that I pointed out was something that has always bothered me in Star Trek. And I was surprised that even in this very first episode, someone mentioned it, is the prospect of being teleported into solid rock.
Yeah. So the transporter one for me was kind of cool because it is similar, but different enough and a little bit silly, like the rest of the episode was, the little moving of the knobs, but I mean, the sequence once you get into there and you're not messing with the machines, is pretty much the same, I feel.
Yeah, the glitter. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's all still in all the Star Trek, so that
Yeah.
was kind of cool. I also like, so I have watched like little bits of a couple different of the Star Treks, and I always was like, why the heck in Next Generation does Picard constantly call him number one? Like, is that something that came from the original? Is that something that's new here? And so to hear Pike continually say number one, I was like, okay, so apparently this is just how they address
The
their
first
second.
officer.
Yeah, the first officer is just number one, apparently.
I love that you picked up on that because, and I could be wrong about this. I'm pretty sure that after this episode, that number one is not on the show. That's Gene Roddenberry's wife, by the way.
Oh, really?
Michelle Barrett Roddenberry, yeah.
Cool.
And she ends up playing Nurse Chapel, and she does the voice of the computer after this episode. But when Spock becomes the first officer in Kirk's show, and I don't believe that Kirk ever calls Spock number one.
That's interesting.
Right. So somehow that little tidbit, that little quirk of Pike's, whether it's a Pike thing or whether he wanted that to be the official thing you call the first officer, Roddenberry, yeah, somehow it kind of, and I could be wrong, but I think it kind of goes away until it comes back in TNG with Picard calling Riker number one.
Interesting. So it's kind of like a term of affection that you don't use for everyone, if that's the case.
It could be. It could be a little Picard nickname for, yeah.
Yeah. Nope. So I found that interesting because, again, I've never seen this series, but I do really like The Next Generation. So when I was like, oh, he's calling her number one too, like maybe that's like where Picard picked up from that, is that's just the way it is maybe for some people.
I really gotta, yeah. And well, we're gonna find out. I'm gonna watch the show, but I almost feel like I remember being like 12 and thinking to myself like, wow, Kirk never called Spock number one, because I didn't like this series that much when I was young, but I liked the movies based on this series, like the whales. I watched that movie with the whales over and over again.
I want to say that I've possibly seen those movies, but if I have, it's been a very long time.
Oh man, you don't think you've seen The Wrath of Khan?
I'm not sure, honestly.
Wow, I mean,
I think I have, but let's see. Let's see if it.
I would recommend
anything.
it like at your discretion, but that movie is like it's probably considered to be like maybe the best. I mean, a lot of people would probably say that's their favorite Star Trek movie.
And that's Star Trek number 2 is what it's called.
Yep. And that's, I mean, so much, there's a lot of just unbelievably classic tropes. In fact, that movie is the first time that I heard someone speculate upon being transported into solid rock.
Yeah, I don't particularly recognize this, so it's possible that I have never seen this. But I will go and look and watch and see if anything rings a bell. But it doesn't immediately like go, oh yeah, I've totally seen this movie. Like, I'm not getting those vibes.
2, 3, and 4 were sort of like a trilogy, and they also happened to be like in a box set that my grandfather had. I think he had 1 through 4, but the first one is weird, and they didn't make the second one until years later. But 2, 3, and 4 really follow like one storyline through them, and yeah, I watched that. So I mean, basically, the movies 2, 3, and 4 were what I know from my childhood about TOS. So I have not seen a lot of this actual original series. So yeah, that'll be fun.
Looks like you can find it on Hulu, and I do have Hulu, and it looks like we've got through 6 at least. So yeah, maybe I'll check it out.
It sure did continue after that, yeah.
Yeah.
Star Trek 5 is I think 5 was in the box set I'm talking about. 5 was directed by William Shatner, and it is not considered to be a good movie.
Gotcha. Well,
That's the final frontier, yeah.
I have feelings about that William Shatner. And I was kind of glad he wasn't in this first episode because I cannot stand the cadence of his voice. I don't know what it is. It drives me insane.
Oh, well, you might not like the original series at all in that case.
I know. So we're gonna try it,
We'll
and we're gonna
out.
see how long it takes for me to get annoyed with him. If the storylines are good enough, I can maybe push that aside. But yeah, his voice drives me insane.
He has a very specific way of speaking.
He does. It's a very specific cadence that he has, and I don't know. It's just.
I almost feel like it might come from some kind of stage training or, stage acting, which I don't know if he did or not.
It seems like it
He's
because
doing something.
It feels very. It doesn't feel natural. It feels like he trained his voice to be that way.
Yeah, he's doing something on purpose. What do you think about the storyline here in this episode and any type of symbolism you may have picked up? And this is the hardest question, and you can answer it any way you want.
So as per usual, it always starts out, someone's in distress.
Right.
And I guess, I'm assuming that the Telosians probably somehow picked up in someone's mind or read on the computer about this, or probably from, what was it, Vina? So she probably, she came from the ship and she was the only survivor. They said, oh, there's the 11 survivors, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it only ended up being the one chick, but it's always someone in distress. It's always someone in distress.
It's a popular way to start a Star Trek episode.
I mean, which makes sense. You're exploring space. You pick up the distress signal. That's kind of the way this works. So I thought it was interesting seeing all of the, you get on the planet and everyone's like dressed in this primitive wear. And I'm like, where did this come from? Because, I mean, I guess there's probably fending for themselves and they've had to adapt, but it was like, okay, so we're living primitively, whatever. And then there's the one female.
Yes.
And I'm like, okay, so there's this one female, and, is she keeping the population? Like, I don't know what's happening with this chick. Is she, gonna sleep with everyone? And I was very confused. And I was like, okay, so there's the one girl. And then they go up to the hill and they all just disappear. And then guys that look like they have butts on their head come out. I was like, oh my goodness, why is it always like the mega mind like dudes who are smarter than everyone else, obviously. But that they're not smarter than everyone else. They've got their weaknesses that we're gonna exploit. And so now we're in this cage and they just keep calling it a zoo. Although, I don't know, it doesn't look like any zoo I've seen. But, like, you can kind of see where, like, it looks like there's the stalls of some sort of zoo.
There's an ape in there.
There was an ape, and he had a very bad costume. Like, straight out of, someone's closet that they had for Halloween. It was bad. And then there was the bird guy. He was pretty bad, too.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the girl's back, and you're like, okay, so is this girl, like, one of them, but, like, disguised, or what is her role here? And then, I don't know, just the typical, like, trope where, like, trying to figure out how to please the humans. If we give them everything they want, all their dreams, they'll just stay here forever with us, right? I feel like that's very typical for Star Trek, where they're like, here is a new reality, and nothing bad will happen, and everything's great.
But
then they see right through that. No, this is not what I want. It's not real. And they just... I was trying to figure out what was the deal, like, so they don't understand the primitive emotions of hate.
Right.
And that's how we block our mind signals?
I guess so.
So there was just a lot of, like, I don't know. There were
arbitrary
some
rules.
leaps and bounds and
Yeah.
rules that I was trying to navigate. Okay, so this is a rule, but we can take people anywhere, and all that. But the hate, that's the part that we can't get over.
Yeah, and they're just in the end they're just surprised at how much he continues to hate them.
Right, like, although it seems like that, Vita's talking about how, like, she's done this thing for years and, like, she hated them for a long time, but eventually gave in. And it's like, but then you kind of, like, see, like, maybe it wasn't so much that she was giving into it, but that she was kind of broken.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
And enjoyed the illusion better than the reality. And that's, I think, where they got this idea. Oh, we'll just give these guys this alternate reality, and they'll love it because this girl does.
I feel like there were probably a lot of people on that ship that, if they had been given the choice, they would have been like, "Oh yeah, cool, whatever I want. I'll hang out in the zoo." A lot of people would make that choice right now these days.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting because by the end of the episode, like, it really does seem like these guys are not trying to be evil. They're like, but we would give you, like, this benevolent captivity. It would be great.
Yeah, they don't understand what his problem is, and they think that he's just being primitive and hateful.
Right. That it's not that, well, I have free will, like, I don't want to live in a cage, and I don't want to do your bidding. It was, you were just filled with so much hate.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure where they were going with looking at the ship's log and looking at all this stuff. Like, I thought maybe they were going to be like, oh my gosh, these guys have such powerful weapons. We got to get more of these guys. Like, they're where it at. And they're like, we don't want you anymore. Goodbye. And they just let him go. Like, what is up with that?
Well, we definitely see these Telosians again, so...
Okay. These exact Telosians?
I'm pretty sure we see these exact ones. But definitely in the modern stuff, like in Discovery, we see them again.
I haven't seen Discovery. So my thing is it sounds like they have this whole, like, there's a bunch of them, but you only ever see the 3. So is the bunch of them an illusion, or are there really tons of them around and they just chose to pick these 3 because, it's back in the 60s and they don't have access to, we're going to have all these extras, on set, sort of thing.
I think that's a good question because it definitely was that we have 3 actors and we have this much makeup. Like, that definitely is the answer. But as far as the story is concerned, like, it could be that there's a bunch of them. Like, one of them says something about, like, how her race is dreaming about other lifetimes and living other people's lives over and over again or something, and they can't come out of their own illusions. So it could be that all the other ones are sitting around in VR just, not helping out. But it also could be that there's only 3 of them and the entire thing's an illusion and they don't know what to do. Well, I think either way they don't know what to do. There's really my fourth question, we're getting into... My fourth question is not really a question because I feel like this will change. I really meant to silence my phone. Well, that's a lesson I'll learn someday. But yeah, something that I thought was really interesting was the way that, these super powerful people that are trying to control, all the other characters through various types of manipulation are... perhaps at the very end of their civilization. Like, they don't have control over their citizens, and none of them seem to even really care that much. Like, it seems like they have lost something intrinsic or just their will because things are collapsing around them and they have this very comfortable alternate illusory reality that they can escape to whenever they want. There's so many things that this could be metaphoric for: drug use, abuse of control, and just so many things going on here.
Well, and they do mention about the illusions. They're like narcotics.
Yeah, They do. They do.
So they are absolutely kind of hitting on, that this for them is like an addiction. And maybe they themselves live in this alternate reality because maybe their civilization is indeed falling apart around them.
Yeah, or completely gone. It could be
Or
the three of
completely
them.
gone.
And they
It
might
could
not
be-
even be able to, face the fact that they're the last ones remaining.
Yeah, and so they build up like this whole, well, we're going to capture all these people and we're going to make new civilization because they might be the last and they don't want to be alone. No, I find them interesting. I'm glad we see more of them later, although Discovery is a long way away. I don't think I'm there yet. But
There is a 2-part episode in the original series where we revisit
that goes
these guys.
more?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I wanna know more about these guys
We
and
see them again in the original series.
their life and what exactly is going on with them. Although maybe I won't get that much of an answer.
Yeah, I don't
But
know.
they're interesting. Their heads look ridiculous, but 60s, we can expect that.
Did you notice that they made the prop so that the veins could actually pulse and bulge?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Neat
At
touch.
the end. At the end, it was a little distracting, like the scene where they're like, "You are no use to us," and his vein is just
Throbbing,
pulsing, and I'm
yeah.
like, "This is weird." But yeah, I mean, you definitely get that distinction there, that because they say you're our last hope.
Yeah.
So I do wonder what their state of affairs are that the humans were their last hope, and if they're going to give up and try something new, or maybe it's a setback and they'll actually try again later.
My last question is, how many points out of 10 for this episode?
Oh boy, points out of 10 for this episode.
Yeah, just this one as a piece of media that you sat down and watched for 1 hour, not related to anything else.
Not related to the overall series with multiple series in it. This was pretty low for me. I'd say this was a 3 out of 10.
Ooh.
It gets that high even because I did like some of the characters, but
Okay.
then there are points that can take it away knowing that some of these characters I'm not actually going to continue seeing. And so it's a little sad. I mean, I'll see them in other forms and other series, but the fact that I don't know how different of a show I'm going to be watching. And I kind of was starting to like some of these people. Some of them I found extremely annoying. But I very limited sample size. But yeah, this is not my favorite of the Star Treks. So we'll see what comes next. I did find it interesting that instead of ensigns, they call them yeomen.
Sure. Yeah.
I found that part interesting, and I'm curious if they continue that through the whole series, or when it changes over. Is it this series? Is it another series that they change over the wording? I don't know. I find things like that interesting. So I'll say that I'm hooked a little bit to see what it's like with the actual episode 1, and then we'll see how the media goes from there. But this episode was a little hard to watch at times in the beginning, and the stars are going around in the opening scene.
They do
what
a
is
weird.
that?
Do you mean do you mean when they're looking at the view? Because there's 2 different things that are weird. One is whenever they're looking at a view screen in this episode, there's just this weird smushing effect on the stars. But there's also the scene the first time they go to travel at, I don't know if they say warp speed or light speed or anything.
I think they say warp speed.
The theme, everyone goes silent and looks really stoic, and the theme song starts playing, and there's just superimposed stars flying across the
Right?
bridge. Is that what you mean?
Yes, what is that? That was when that first showed up, I was like, if the whole episode is gonna be
Is
like
this what it's gonna be like? Yeah, a
I'm
music
not
video.
sure I'm not sure I could get through this. This is really silly, a level of silly that even I'm not sure that I'm up for. And yeah, there were just some, and when they went to the view screens of the televisions watching, I'm I don't know, the changeover was just so weird. There were
Mhm.
some weird effects that like really
Oh,
got
yeah.
me like that I was like, okay, well we're you know, in my mind this makes this very silly. We're knocking down some points, you know, for the absolute silliness.
Sure.
Like what why are there stars just in the bridge? Like they're not outside, you know. And when they're sending the I don't know, when they're sending the distress signal or something and the stars are all pulsing,
Yeah, yeah.
I expected something from that.
I thought it was, at first I was like, oh, there's a cloaked ship out there, but I guess it's
Right.
just weird squishing star effects for some reason.
Right. I thought that it was something like something's gonna appear here. This is important. And it just the stars continued to pulse in and out, and then it's just all done. Like what is even the point of this? So yeah, there were right from the beginning I had pretty low expectations
Mhm.
based on the first like 5 minutes, the weird graphical effects that they chose to use, and how like I figured some of it would have any sort of meaning, and it didn't. It was just like, here, we can do these cool effects and we'll draw all the people in with our cool effects. Which maybe worked back then.
It was, yeah, it's 1960s. It could be that whole thing with the stars going through the bridge and the music playing. It might have been like, this is going to be trippy. People are going to love watching this. They've never seen anything like this. Could have been. I mean, I have no idea what the 60s were like.
So yeah, my opinion of this episode is a little low, but because it's not the true beginning, I feel like I owe it to watch episode 1 and see what that is like, and then kind of reassess, because I can't base the original series on this episode, obviously.
Sure. Yep.
So now I have to. I'm glad I watched it, because it'll be a good compare and contrast for when I watched the first episode. But I feel like I'm gonna have to watch that before I can judge the series in any more
In any full kind of way.
right in any way that really matters. So
Yeah. We'll find out. 1960s television. But yeah, let's watch episode 1 and talk again.
I would love that. Yeah, I'm interested. I'm invested enough to give that a try, and we'll see what happens.
All right, so let me say thank you very much for joining me.
Anytime. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you again. And yeah, I'm going to stop recording. All right, so great. That was episode 0, The Cage.
Oh man, the nostalgia.
So first of all, I don't think they ever called number 1 Una,
Nope.
but you recognized her, right?
Oh, it was Major Barrett.
Okay.
It was Nurse Christine Chapel.
Nurse Chapel?
Yeah, before she got reassigned. Major Barrett plays the voice of the computer and Nurse Chapel on the show in general.
Oh, Majel got reassigned, you mean? Or
Yeah, the actress
okay.
when they got changed over to Christine Chapel and the computer voice.
Okay, right. And of course, Luxana Troy.
Was she Luxana?
Oh my god. Yeah.
Oh, well then, there you go. Today
Yeah,
I
yeah.
learned.
Oh wow. All right, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
You should, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the first thing. If someone was like, and by the way, she also married Gene Roddenberry.
Yeah, that one I also knew. And she was acting in Star Trek up until like 10 years ago, whatever it was.
If someone asked me what role Majel Barrett Roddenberry played, I would say Luxana Troy. But that's also because my main thing is TNG as far as Star Trek goes.
Well, see, she was still the computer in Star Trek. So.
She was also, yeah, she was, yeah.
Like she was the computer voice. As far as I know, like in everything. I don't think they ever changed her out, and then they've just used like AI and stuff for her more recently. Maybe I don't know. I haven't really watched past Enterprise, right? So
Yeah, I was about to speculate whether or not they were using some version of her voice in any of the recent stuff.
I did a quick Google while we're talking about her, and she passed away in 2008 at 76. So she had a very, very long life of Star Trek. Like this was her life.
Good for her. That's
Yeah.
a cool lady.
She was very cool.
So, in the opening scene of The Cage, Captain Pike and his crew, which really consists of Mr. Spock as far as characters we would be familiar with,
Yeah.
and a bunch of characters that probably had names, but we don't get them in this episode. You know, if this version of the series had gone on, they probably would have become full characters, but he's surrounded by a bunch of dudes on the bridge and Mr. Spock, and they receive a distress call from a planet in the Talos system where 18 years ago a ship crashed, and Spock says maybe we should. Oh, and also, this is the first time that we mention a Class M planet, which is a planet generally that can support human life. And Spock's like, well, they could still be living there. Let's go see. And Pike is like, no. I've had enough adventuring lately. Pike is like, no, let's keep going to wherever we were going anyway.
Oh,
He's in like a bad mood. And like, you know, the
Yeah.
camera pans and Spock notices. And, you know.
Yeah. I did not remember how vague they were about everything relating to Pike in this episode. Until watching it again. It's like, oh yeah, because he talks about some of the adventures and stuff he'd done, like some of the events that had occurred before this, and there's no way to know what he's talking about, right? Like it's like dropping a place name, like as if you know what Washington D.C. is. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. This is the first time we're meeting the guy at all.
Yeah,
And
I think that I would have liked it with a bit more explanation. I feel like the actual like pilot that aired is a little bit more handholdy, which it needed, especially in the 60s. You know what I mean?
yeah, I think so. Because yeah, this one really, it really in a little bit of a way, it drops us right in the middle of Pike's story. Like, because he's already, well, he speaks to a doctor who is not Bones.
No,
It's
and
Dr.
not as good as Bone either.
It's Dr. Phil, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, Dr. Philip Boyce, according to Wikipedia.
Okay. Dr. Phil comes in and pours him a martini and says, let's have a drink, because you're more likely to talk to your bartender.
Which is true.
Yeah, and that's when we get a little bit of. Pike mentions that there was a conflict on Rigel and some people died, and one of the reasons he's feeling so tormented and sick of space travel is that he doesn't like making these decisions. He doesn't like deciding who lives and who dies and who goes on the away mission and which red shirts go. I didn't see anyone in a red shirt at all, as a matter of fact.
No, I don't think they had any. And honestly, the whole reluctant captain thing,
they're
what
laying it on.
What little I've seen of Strange New World, like that was a major component of him that stuck out to me too. So
this is really, there's a lot of stuff in here that really, well, obviously is laying the groundwork, but I mean, just when looking at recent Star Trek, there is a lot of stuff in Discovery, and really, well, Pike was a big part of season 2 of Discovery, but Strange New Worlds and the whole Pike storyline going on right now is really all revolving around this.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like so much of this.
Yeah, we didn't get that far in Strange New Worlds, so I only had like a couple of episodes, but I mean, Strange New Worlds Pike versus this Pike, it definitely feels, if not, an exact an exact successor. It does feel a lot like a very strong homage. What little I've seen of current Pike, it feels like that guy really tried to get in the head of original Pike. You know,
I think so. I mean, it really has a lot to do with Talos. His whole all of his baggage in the show
Yeah.
has to do with Talos.
Yeah, I agree on that. And it's honestly like, I liked how they did, because like as I mentioned to you, we didn't record this part, but while we were watching it, I mentioned like as we're watching, I'm like, yeah, no, I remember more and more of this.
Yeah.
And you know, they did a lot of legwork. They did a lot of revisiting the things that they were doing the legwork on at the start, and that was nice. Like the
barbarian.
Yeah, the barbarian scene specifically, where it was like straight up, thank you, the thing from back in the day, right? Like from the start of it, where
that's what he was talking about. That's what happened on Rigel. Yeah.
I do like that they were able to do that and show it with the whole psychic control and projection thing that they were able to, and cheaply too. Because seriously, like this show was done on a shoestring budget. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, these sets are, well, they're very 1960s, and they're very obviously whatever we can get, whatever props we can get, whatever is the cheapest, whatever's laying around a lot of time.
Yeah,
I feel like I
feel like a lot of it got borrowed from other shows too, like not Doctor Who, but the other one, the space one, Lost in Space. I feel like stuff would have been totally just passed between the two shows, you know?
Yeah, totally. I feel like, well, there's a very famous anecdote about how some network passed on Star Trek and picked up Lost in Space, and obviously Star Trek was much more successful.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it had more likable characters. I've seen some of the old Lost in Space, and creepy Doctor from Lost in Space just ruins it versus, you know, Bones. Bones was amazing. I no shade to this Dr. Phil guy, but no Dr. Phil should be a doctor.
Yeah, we don't mean to, no offense, Dr. Phil, whoever you may have been if this series had continued.
Yeah, but no, Bones was too good. And they really did need that. Like, I didn't get the sobering or seriousness from this doctor that I got from Dr. Phil. This guy felt like he was off of MASH.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what it is. It doesn't feel like Bones. It doesn't feel like a Star Trek doctor. It feels like a normal military doctor. And that's not what I want. I want something that feels a little bit different, a little bit out there, but still grounded. And I don't feel like this Dr. Phil really hit that, you know?
I feel you. I really feel you. He was kind of like it was like a scene from MASH when he comes in and says, you're more likely to talk to your bartender. And it really, I don't know if all of this has a military feel to it, but there is a sort of military feel to Star Trek, and they may have been leaning into that as this began.
I think they were. I mean, Shatner, as much as he was in control of the ship, was not in control of the ship.
Oh yeah.
And it's interesting to see where the framework, the skeleton of later Star Trek starts at, right? Like it has a lot of the same camp, it has a lot of the same cheapness, it has a lot of the same vague themes. Like, I mean, people zoos and alien zoos are consistently something that comes up throughout all of Star Trek, right? Like almost every series has at least one zoo on it, right? So like it's 100% a Star Trek thing, and the framework and the bones are there. It needed the tweak, and I think I definitely think the revised cast did better for it overall. That's not just the nostalgia vision. I think it actually was just better. Like, for example, the sexism on this versus the sexism on regular Trek, it's still there. It's just not as bad, you know?
We'll see if I end up agreeing with you, because I do recall some Kirk-related sexism, but again, that might be osmosis. There was. I just, for example, I'm not used to a woman on my bridge line right at the beginning. Is that what it is? Like, why was he so mad at that yeoman? Like,
I don't know. And like, number one is a woman. Like Major Barrett gives him like death stares, right? So like.
Yeah, maybe it was, I mean, you mentioned, maybe it was just a huge deal to even have a woman in a military command position like that, 60s culturally, Yeah,
no, culturally, yes, but I think that they handled that sort of stuff a little bit better with Kirk versus Pike. So, Kirk never felt angry about women being in power, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He was just too busy boning them.
That is part of it. But he was definitely, Kirk had a way, Kirk sort of, his leadership was he kind of sauntered his way through the galaxy. He was always kind of just going with the flow and kind of in a good mood. But there were a lot more women on the bridge when Kirk was around. And it was a lot more normal.
Yeah, no, I think again, this has a really good framework for what later Star Trek was. I think they did a good job of kind of setting that stage. But I am glad that they went back and reworked the show based off the feedback they were given. Like, as much as I would have loved to see Majel Barrett as number one throughout the whole show, because I think that would have been excellent. I really am pleased that they did go back and rework everything else, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I mean, this is quite obviously a pilot.
Yeah. But it's still fun. It's still I mean, it's not the best show of episode of Star Trek, even the original series in my opinion. But it's fun. It's pretty well written overall. It's for a pilot, it's a solid pilot. Like, I've seen some pilots and this isn't bad.
No, I mean, I think this was a solid episode of television. I was entertained and, focused.
Yeah.
A lot of, and that's really it. Like, as far as TV goes, you either have my attention or I'm doing 5 other things. And I was really only doing one thing. I was watching this. So
yeah,
that's my like benchmark for if TV is good or not, if I'm able to actually watch it.
Yeah, no, I was doing 2 things, but it's because I was trying to finish up the stuff I was working on before the show started.
You're allowed to do as many things as you want. I'm, the way my mind works is...
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. I have trouble doing one thing at a time, but...
Sure.
It's something that I know in the past I have sat down and just watched this. Like, actually just paid attention and watched the whole thing. So, I mean, clearly it's halfway decent. Like you said, if I'm able to sit there and focus on it, they're doing something right.
I think the writing is good. I think there's a lot of little notes that kind of get set up and then revisited, which is, a classic tactic to kind of keep your audience humming along with you. Not just, such as the Rigel and the Barbarian, he revisits a traumatic incident that he's recently been through. But before that, they get another. Spock calls Pike up. Pike's drinking, and Spock's like, "Hey, we got another distress signal. This one is more elaborate. There are 11 survivors. They're there right now. Let's go get them. What's your problem?" And Pike is like, "Fine." So they go down there. Please.
No, go on.
They go down there and they find 11 old men and I guess an 18-year-old girl, if they're saying that she was born right after the crash and they crashed 18 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And they're sort of speaking mysteriously and talking about the secret of their youth and longevity. And the girl says, "Pike," well, first of all, the girl looks at him and she's like, "Wow, Pike, you are a specimen of health and human virility." And he's like, that's a weird thing to say. I think Pike is on to this smelly situation almost immediately.
He is, yeah.
And he is, he's doing the hesitant hero thing, but he also is like, something's up here. She leads him away and she's like, she starts saying, "Can you tell?" Like, she's being really weird. She has a very dazed look on her face. It's obviously setting up that something is weird. And we very quickly find out that the whole thing is an illusion. She leads him over to a specific rock and says, "Can't you see it? Can't you see our secret here and here?" And he's like, "I don't see anything." She vanishes, and a bunch of Talos bros jump out and grab him. And the 11 old men also vanish because it was all an illusion. And if anyone listening is unfamiliar, Talos bros have big giant heads with a butt crack in the back.
Yeah.
We meet these guys from time to time throughout the series. And like I said, this whole thing is like Pike's whole arc pivots around this event in the current Star Trek stuff. So I really loved like seeing so much that I knew we were going to get back to as all of this is happening.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely going to want to rewatch this episode when we get to Strange New Worlds in our watch through, just to refresh, because if so much of Strange New Worlds is wrapping around this stuff, I really want to rewatch it again. You know, I wish I'd seen more of Strange New Worlds to be able to comment on that better.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to wait until we've watched everything, or
Yeah.
I mean, okay, well, good. If that's the answer, then great.
Yeah, no, I mean, we might watch some of the more recent stuff, you know, outside of the podcast in general,
Yeah.
just because.
Yeah, if you want to, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we like Lower, for example, Lower Decks. Like, if they bring out another season of Lower Decks, I'm
We're
not
gonna have
waiting
to
for you
watch
and I to
that,
catch
yeah.
up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I know Discovery and Strange New Worlds are both things that are
Happening.
they're happening, and we want to watch them. I don't think there's as much pressure from either of us here, like at my home, for Picard, just because we didn't start Picard. But we started Discovery, we started Strange New Worlds, and then we put them down. So I really think those are probably going to get watched, just because, yeah, they're good shows. I wish I had have gotten into Discovery more when we started it, but problems. And Strange New Worlds, I had to stop because there was a reference to something in Discovery and I didn't understand it, and I haven't gotten back to rewatching, right? So
Right, and yeah, and there you go. Actually, I'm very interested in rewatching Discovery season 2, because that's where we get Discovery season. Almost that entire season has Pike and a lot of, maybe not his whole crew, but some of those characters as major characters in Discovery. Season 2 is all about Pike, and in fact about Talos.
I like the fact that, you know, they're doing now. It feels like it's the '90s of Star Trek again, right? Where
Yeah.
In the '90s we had the 30 different series that were all running concurrently, and there was crossovers and people from different shows who were like Deanna Troi was on Voyager and all that. You know what I mean? Like everyone was all over the place. It was just one big happy orgy of Star Trek characters doing cool Star Trek things.
What a time!
And they're doing it again now. And like, I mean, we've got the crossover from Lower Decks into Strange New Worlds that I'd love to see. There's a lot of Strange New Worlds of Discovery that cross over into each other. I can't wait to sit down and actually really start consuming the current stuff, because like it's gonna be a ride.
If there's something that you're gonna watch, if there's something, then I'll show this to you right now if you want. But if there's something you're gonna watch out of order, I strongly recommend the Strange New Worlds episode with Boimler.
I want to see that, and I want to see the musical episode.
You want to? Do you want to watch them tonight?
No, it's almost bedtime here.
Okay. That's fine.
Completely unrelated to this podcast, we're watching through all the modern Doctor Who stuff because my nerd cred is in jeopardy here.
Wow.
So
I have seen one episode of Doctor Who.
I watched some of the old stuff from, again, the 60s, like the black and white Doctor Who.
Yeah, wow.
Because I used to be, on occasion, a few of those episodes were on, you know, Space or Sci-Fi or whatever the channel was called.
Oh, yeah.
Back when I was watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine on the same channel, you know what I mean? Like, you wake up at 4 a.m, you get to run into like the monsters and everything too. It's great.
Oh wow, yeah, wow, that is old.
Yeah, but I didn't see. Functionally, I hadn't seen anything of the new stuff, other than the occasional episode when posers that had cable and fans. So we started watching Eccleston. And now we're on, I think, season 3 or season 2 of David Tennant's Doctor. So that is, you watch Star Trek with the cats at night. I watch Doctor Who.
Cool. Maybe the next thing will be my, not a rewatch, but my first Doctor Who watch.
Hey, you know what? I heartily recommend it. There are some powerful episodes. I feel like it's not hard, if you're a fan of Star Trek, to be a fan of Doctor Who. Now that I'm watching the new stuff, like, it really feels. See, I'm gonna say something that's gonna be controversial, and you're gonna get comments on it, and I know it.
Okay.
But there's a lot I feel of Voyager type Star Trek.
All right.
With how Doctor Who is done, and that's in the fact that it's not so much like what's happening or anything. There's just a vibe. I've got for some reason about it. There's that Voyager vibe. Mixed in, and I don't know what specifically it is. Like, I can't put my finger on it, but there's a Voyager vibe to me.
Okay, I mean, I kind of feel you. I mean, it makes sense to me what you're saying. Even
yeah. So I mean, I'm enjoying it. So, but no, I mean, this is excellent, and I can't wait. Like tomorrow, next time we do this, like it's going to be the Man Trap, and that's, oh man, that is going to be a thing. That's the actual pilot, you know?
Yeah, that's the actual Kirk pilot.
Yeah, and it's gonna be good to be able to look at the two of them back to back like that and really
Yeah, we'll see.
how,
We'll
how it
see.
changes, right? Like
We'll see how sexist the man trap is. It's
I'm-
got to
I'm-
be a little bit.
Well, I think as well. What I'm looking forward to is being able to actually see the ship, right? Like, there's not this one. This one here is very much. This episode was very much a planet side episode.
Oh,
That
yeah.
happens. Every season has at least a couple episodes that are practically bottle episodes on random planet of the week.
Yep.
But I like the ship episodes too, and I like the introduction to the ship that we get with the man trap. I think it's going to be a fun episode. It's going to be at least interesting,
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of what we see going on the ship is basically a lot of the number one and Spock plotline during this episode is them kind of going back and forth and trying various laser beams and ways to detonate the elevator that they used to grab Pike and take him underground. But at one point they bring down like what looks like a laser cannon, like it looks like it's at least 4 feet long and a foot thick, and they're firing rainbow lasers at the rock elevator that they took Pike through.
Yeah.
Which was great. And for another thing, something that terrified me when it was mentioned in Star Trek 2, I guess this is the first time they talk about it, teleporting directly into solid rock.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a creepy way to go.
It is a fear. I'm so glad we are not that far advanced at this point, because that would be a legitimate fear.
Oh my god, I'm never teleporting. I don't care.
No.
I don't care
No,
how
I
safe
will
they
be
say it
Bones.
is.
I'm going to be 100% the same as Bones is. You cannot make me teleport. I know what that's doing to me. Screw you. So, no, I'm 100% nah. The whole teleportation thing is terrifying. I mean, space travel in general is, but...
Oh my god, oh my god, please send me to space. Please send me to the moon, but don't make me teleport.
And the phasers in this one, I don't know if you noticed it, but these are unique to specifically the cage. Like, the phaser got a complete revamp too.
I really like that we got like a nice close-up shot of the communicator.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really cool looking prop and clearly made for this show, and really oh man. Yeah. They make a comment about how in the Strange New Worlds episode, they make a comment about how the kids from the future just touch their badge to communicate, and they're talking about how the flip up communicators are better.
They are.
That's the classic Star Trek communicator right there.
Oh yeah, and then like the uniform changes that they go through as well, where it's like these turtlenecks that you have to imagine on that episode, like people are sweating like crazy. That can't be.
Oh my god,
it could not have been comfortable.
On this episode in particular, but just when you hear stories about the original and even Next Generation getting made, people talk about how uncomfortable and poorly made the uniforms were. Just through both of those series, that was like a big thing, and again because cheap as possible.
Yeah, no, it's grab a sweater, dye it the right color, and slap a pin on it, and you're done. Or the unitards in TNG. The full body thing where you basically
always tugging at it.
Well, I cannot imagine. That's honestly, I can't imagine any Star Trek has a comfortable uniform. I think the only one that might have was Enterprise, and that's just because those were jumpsuits and baggy,
Right. Yeah.
No, but this is great. I'm just as excited to keep going with this as I was when we started. So this is fantastic.
I'm really glad you're excited.
It's a good show for how cheesy and behind the times, based on modern sensibilities, that show was. Like, there's the sexism in it, but otherwise it still holds up. You know what I mean? Like, it's not putting anybody down, and even the sexism felt, like, especially with Pike's anger about it, it felt like, oh, dude, you're behind the times, like, catch up kind of a thing, So
yeah, it even did kind of feel like that, and even when we say when we talk about 1960s, there's nothing even offensive really in this episode. I mean, there's things like when they're going to teleport down to the planet, the Telosians just intercept the women and stick them in Pike's cage to be like, here you go. Choose from these 3 women. We need you to breed our slave race.
Yeah, but I mean that there is that there doesn't even feel offensive so much as just a horror movie. I mean, I've seen worse in Hostel type thing. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
like that just straight up just felt a necessary evil. We need to keep you around to breed. You get to choose. Like at least he's getting a choice. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And that's and again, and then he gets mad at her again at the very end of the episode, and we're skipping around a lot here, but the same girl is, you know, she's like, by the way, which one of us would you have, you know? And he's like, get the hell out of here. Actually, I think number 1 says that.
Yeah, no, it's very much we're not even entertaining this conversation. Go away. This is a dumb chat now.
And sort of, yeah, and aside from the sort of general, what we sort of talked about the network not letting him put a woman on the bridge, and which he ended up did, a black woman. So I guess he eventually got his way.
I guess so.
Maybe not as the second officer.
Yeah, no, there's even with Uhura, like there's a bunch.
I mean, I guess the first officer, I guess.
Well, in this one, the issue with this one was both the alien and the first officer was woman. It was that they had both. He could have a first officer that was female, or he could have an alien. He could not have both. That's why.
Sorry.
No,
did Kirk not have a first officer? Was Spock the first officer, or was he the science
Spock was the first officer.
Spock was? Okay.
He was first officer and he was science officer.
Oh, okay.
But that's why Nichelle Nichols got hired as Uhura, was because they had to downgrade number one from being a woman. Okay. So she got to be a glorified secretary. But that was just to sell her. That if you actually watch the show, like she is very good at what she does, and she is not a glorified secretary at all. It's just they had to present her that way, right? So, yep. But yeah, no. Majel Barrett gets downgraded from being number 1 to becoming the Nurse Chapel, which was the head nurse too. Like she's still a person of power in her field, you know. And I don't know how much of that was because Roddenberry was hitting on her, or how much that was, you know, please do this thing because you're good, but she was excellent in the role. And I really would have liked to have seen more of her as a number 1. I think that her number 1 character could have been really, really interesting.
Yeah, that is one of the few things, like seeing this episode that I would have changed about TOS, that I would have kept around. Like it really is too bad that in a lot of the revisions that went really well, it's too bad that we lost Majel Barrett as a main character. Yeah, no, I agree on that 100%. Like, it was a great show. It got better. It needed to get better, but I want more of her. I really do. And I feel like as Nurse Chapel, she played second fiddle too much to a second fiddle character. She became a much more secondary character as Nurse Chapel. Yeah, well, she was support to Bones, and Bones was, as much as he was main cast, he was still not main cast. You know what I mean? He wasn't Kirk, and he wasn't Spock. Yep. So, yeah. So we talked about, kind of the plot of the episode is that the Telosians want to, they want a human slave race, and that's why they're trying to capture him and breed him, but they create, illusions to keep him under control. And like we talked about, he goes back to the conflict he just had, where he kills this barbarian, which is kind of funny that it really looks like a scene from a medieval encounter on Rigel. And they tempt him with various ways. And remember when I said I thought there was going to be an Orion slave girl? Yeah, I forgot about that. I totally didn't. Oh my word. This show had way too many girls half-dressed doing weird dances. So there's some of the sexism and extremely leering men. I don't know what that scene was supposed to be. It's enticing. It's supposed to make Pike want to, make babies with her. A palace of luxury where they're all dressed in fine silks and golden props from some other show. Yeah, these were all props they borrowed from Sinbad or something. Oh, 100%. 100%. I really please.
No, I think that's partly why, because if you watch like through all of the original series, there's a lot of stuff that occurs. It's like, why this? Like, why would you go there? And it just always felt like they went shopping at like the next stage door, and was like, oh, you're doing this here? Can we steal your set for a week?
I really think even into TNG, that's how a lot of these episodes got made. There are some times where I feel like there must have been these props laying around, and they must have not had, not had much to do, and that at a certain point they must have been like, writers, this is what we have to work with. And I mean, I don't know. That's partially headcanon, but I'm sure it's a little bit true.
I can't see it not being true, honestly.
I mean, especially with the costumes.
Yeah.
And that scene.
I agree.
Yeah. The barbarian stuff and this scene with the Orion slave girl.
The barbarian stuff felt like Conan was being filmed.
Yeah,
it really did.
That barbarian was straight out of Conan.
100%.
like as an extra. Yeah, Conan was Conan was a lot later than this. Never mind.
No, it was like the 80s, I know, but still, like it felt like that 100%.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think Conan was the 80s, wasn't it?
Absolutely, like 85 at least. Maybe, I mean, who knows, but something like that. So the woman that has been on Talos for 18 years. That's the only part of it was true, is that they did find, she wasn't a baby. She was an adult woman, but that was so injured that they were unable to put her back together the right way. But she also is wearing an illusion to look like an 18-year-old girl, and she's trying to get Pike to stay with her and help populate this planet. But I was really captivated by the scene where she starts talking about their telepathy powers and the illusions, and she says that it was a trap, and that they stayed underground and they stopped advancing and they kept dreaming their way through recorded lives, and they weren't even able to repair the machines left around them. And it felt so poignant to me with the current state of the internet and people staying in their houses watching TikTok and doing nothing else and living internet lives to the extent where we're not even maintaining the structures of society around us. I mean, that might just be really in my head right now.
I don't know. I mean, I live in a pretty built up area, and I know what my road's like, and they've been doing construction on the main street near my house for the last 4 years, since we moved here,
yeesh.
And it's worse than ever. So I mean,
what's going on out there? Are we living in? Has this happened to us? Do we have so much illusion around us already that we don't? This is real old shit from me. I've been doomerin for a while, but I found that really poignant.
Yeah, no, it was great. I the social commentary that's still accurate was nice, because it's just social commentary. You're living in a cave.
This was going on in the 60s.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the 60s, I feel like they would have been trying to do it as an implication for like the Cold War and people burying their hands in the sand around that. You know what I mean? Like different reasons, but same result.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I mean, we are kind of doing that now a little bit. I mean, with I don't want to get political, and I'm not trying to turn this into that, but like we've got stuff like the Ukrainian war and the Palestinian war, where there's a couple of really big things happening in the world. And we're like, I don't wanna.
It becomes impossible to now. There's just so much bad news. Yeah, it becomes impossible to process, and the way we consume news and stuff now is just in front of us constantly, and it's killing us.
Yeah, even TikTok they can't get away from it on TikTok either. Trust me.
You can't. I believe you. Can't get away from it anywhere.
No, it's and there's benefits of having the interconnectivity of the internet that we've got. Like we can watch
Obviously.
Star Trek, and you and I live in 2 different countries and are still able to do this. This is technology. It's awesome, but also.
I'm gonna. Well, there's one more thing I want to say about this episode.
Sure.
And it's that this is the first time that we see horses in Star Trek. Something that I always like. Maybe because Picard was so fond of horses, but I think Roddenberry must have been too, because there's horses all over the place in the original series. they go to the Nexus and go to Horse Heaven eventually, you know?
Generations, like the whole chat with Kirk while he's cleaning a horse.
The most iconic meeting of two iconic captains from two different eras of this iconic thing.
And it's over the back of a horse.
Let's go to Horse Heaven. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's insane how much horses, like, of all the animals, like, horses are the ones that the show latched on. And, like, almost every series has some version of a horse, you know?
Absolutely, yeah. It's all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to, just because of the stuff we were just talking about, I want to read a quote from Carl Sagan. But before that, I want to say thank you for doing this with me and recording a first episode together. And I'm looking
forward to the future of this. It's going to be great. All right, so quick question to you before we wrap up. Rating out of 10. What is your rating on this show, this episode?
Man, just because of all of the little tidbits that I know that I recognized because of Strange New Worlds, I am comfortable giving this an 8.
Ooh,
I felt like this was more connected to the whole thing than I expected it to be. I felt like I had more interest in these characters because I kind of know some of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like this is a good. I don't think this is a good jumping on point. If I was going to be like, if someone didn't know about Star Trek, I wouldn't be like, yeah, start from episode 0 to us. I would not say that. But for me,
I'd tell them to watch something for the modern stuff, like not Lower Decks necessarily, but Picard or Strange New Worlds, something new.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Strange New Worlds is honestly incredible. I can't get over how much I like that show.
Yeah, no, 8's a good number. I mean, I don't think because I don't have the connection with the Strange New Worlds to it, I don't think I'm going quite as high.
Sure.
I think definitely a solid 7, maybe a 7.5, but a solid 7 for me. Because like I said, it's got the really strong framework. It's got Spock, and who doesn't love Spock?
Yeah.
And Majel Barrett in a leadership role. I mean, it's the only time we get to really see it.
The only time we get Majel Barrett as number 1.
And that's going to push it that little bit more. Otherwise, I think it'd be a little bit. I think I'd honestly be putting it like a 6.5 if it weren't for her.
I don't think she had a name in this episode. I think she
just as number 1.
I wonder if she did, like in the script, or if she was going to, or I don't even know how much was planned of this version at all.
So. When I was looking at the Wikipedia for this episode specifically, it didn't say any name. It literally just had her down as number 1. So if she had a name, or if they had planned a name, I would expect it to be in there, and I didn't see it. You know.
Gotcha.
So, yeah. But yeah, right. Solid episode. Thank you so much for showing it and doing this and hanging out with me. I really do appreciate this because it's something I want to do, and not doing it alone makes it a little easier.
Awesome. This is something I've kind of been noodling about, and I'm really glad that we're gonna do this.
It's gonna be awesome. I cannot wait for the next 913 episodes.
913 or something like that. Okay.
Yeah. All right.
So this is the Carl Sagan quote we're going to close on.
Awesome.
I have a foreboding of an America in my children's or grandchildren's time when the United States is a service and information economy, when nearly all the manufacturing industries have slipped away to other countries, when awesome technological powers are in the hands of a very few, and no one representing the public interest can even grasp the issues, when the people have lost the ability to set their own agendas or knowledgeably question those in authority, when, clutching our crystals and nervously consulting our horoscopes, our critical faculties in decline, unable to distinguish between what feels good and what's true, we slide, almost without noticing, back into superstition and darkness.
Mic drop.
Thank you so much, Toronto. I will talk to you very soon.
Thank you very much. You have yourself a great night, and I will talk to you soon as well.
Great, you too.
All right, cheers.
Cheers. All right, great. Thank you for listening to episode 1 of The Least Ready Room, a Star Trek full rewatch with Dave and Chris, a podcast which is a Star Trek covering. It got late while I was working on this. And so I think that this show will be coming out on Sundays. One of the reasons I want to make sure that this show comes out the same day every week on a weekly basis is that I want to do a question of the week. This was the first episode, but we already have done a question of the week on my Discord, and we'll see if this continues or how this works with the flow of the show, and this might be here at the end or somewhere else. We'll see. I'm going to figure out the structure of the show, and I'm also going to try not to talk so much about my process and structure. Did I already say that in the beginning? I don't know. But so the question this week was, and I meant this is not really a discussion question because it probably has a correct answer, but because when Chris and I started doing this, we had to talk about if you were to put the Star Trek timeline in chronological order, what would it look like? And my first question was, well, shit, where do we start? And, because you might say, I don't even know if Enterprise or Discovery happens earlier. Probably Enterprise. But would you start with episode 1 of Enterprise? And then let's think about it. Certainly, if the timeline is, well, if you're talking about just episodes, it's a little more difficult because there are plenty of episodes that really take place in 2 different parts of the timeline. There's plenty of time travel episodes and situations. Anyway, the question of the week was, if you were to put every scene in Star Trek in chronological order, what on-screen event happens first? What is the earliest point in Star Trek history that we see? So my friend Saint replied first with TNG episode 1, where there is a flashback to post-atomic Earth. I think it's the aftermath of World War III. And then he thought about it a little more, and he mentioned the TNG movie First Contact, where they go back in time to the invention of the warp drive. And then he said, oh, or shit, the whales in the 80s. Yeah. And, of course, there is also an episode of TOS where they go back to the 1920s or 30s. There's also an episode of TNG. They go back and hang out with Mark Twain and Guinan on TNG. And in TOS, I believe that's the episode called City on the Edge of Forever, in which they go back to some little 1920s, 1930s mining town, something like that. So he also said, does anyone ever time travel to the Big Bang or something? To which I replied, or something, but let's see. And then, and then our friend Locke replied that in All Good Things, which is the final episode of TNG, Q takes Picard back to the formation of unicellular life on Earth, which is pretty far back. And that was my answer. And that might be the correct one, unless anyone else has some other ideas. Weebs also chimed in, and he mentioned that his first thought, which is really what I was asking about, people's first thoughts. His first thought was a teenage Kirk driving his dad's Corvette off a cliff for some reason. But yeah, I think the answer is the formation of unicellular life on Earth in the end of TNG. But anyway, so that's going on my Discord. And this week's question, and you can respond on Discord or you can get in touch with me any number of ways, which I'll describe after I ask the question. This is the question. The question for this week is, out of all the terrible fates and awful things that happen to Star Trek characters, what is one of the worst things that we see happen to a Star Trek character? The worst and most terrible fate in Star Trek. That's this week's discussion question, and maybe I'll word it better when I actually type it out on Discord. But you don't have to be on Discord to get in touch with me. You can just go to koyadk.tv, where first of all you can get a link to my Discord, but you can also get in contact with me on various other socials that are linked there. I'm on Blue Sky now as CUYADK, and by the way, that website is CUYADK.tv. for all of my stuff. And you can find Chris on Twitch, twitch.tv/Toronto ABC. You can also find Midori on Twitch, twitch.tv/Midori SKYZ. And I'll be on Twitch sometime, but really you can find me on that website. You can talk to me on Discord, and I think that's it. Is that all the stuff? That's us. That's who we are. That's where you can find us. You can come to Discord or contact me in some other way to answer the question of the week, and whatever answers I receive, I will read in the next episode, which hopefully will be out next Sunday evening. And also, if you have any comments or questions for us, if you ask them and indicate that it's something that you think would be a good discussion for the show, or that if you indicate that it's about this particular show, or I don't know why I'm being so specific about, I guess because sometimes people message me and they say things and I might not realize that they're telling me it because they think it would. You know what? Everyone, I think you get the point. Thank you so much for listening. What's this one called? Thank you so much for listening to The Least Ready Room, and I will catch you next Sunday.